Conversations with Iris. Here's your host, my loving wife, Iris.
Hola, mi gente bonita. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to another Conversations with Iris, the little podcast that could. And I am your host, Iris Edis. First and always, I want to thank each and every one of you. Yes, I got to send some shout out to you because I want to thank you for tuning in and for downloading and for sharing this podcast and for continuing to grow this beautiful community with me. It just means the world to me. I truly mean that. And of course, you already know Fridays are fun days, okay? They are fun day Fridays here on Conversations with Iris. So make sure you tune in every Friday for another inspiring conversation. We're going to talk about something that so many people experience but don't always understand it. And hear me out. We're going to talk about that little thing we want to call burnout, stress, and how our nervous system actually impacts the way we lead, the way we live, and how we show up and do things in the world. Yes, yes. So let that sink in for a moment. Think about that for a moment because hear me out. This conversation is not just for leaders, it's for anybody who has ever felt overwhelmed, exhausted, or like they were just trying to push through life, but they feel rather empty. Does that relate to you? Because I sure have felt like that many times in my life, I'll tell you. So let me tell you today about our wonderful guest. My guest today is a wonderful trauma informed leadership expert. She's a burnout recovery coach, a nurse educator, and a workplace wellness strategist. She has more than 20 years, I would say, of experience in healthcare leadership and higher education, just helping individuals in the organization just understand the deeper biological roots of that burnout and stress. She is actually the author, yes, of the Regulate First, Lead Second, Master Your Biology, Transform Your Leadership. Ooh, that's so deep. I love it. It just got my hair standing up. Let me repeat that again. The book is titled Regulate First, Lead Second, Master Your Biology, Transform Your Leadership. I love that. But through her work, I love it how she bridges that neuroscience, trauma informed care, and that organization psychology that we know about, and just helping leaders and professionals learn how to regulate their nervous system so they could lead with clarity, compassion, and resilience instead of that crazy thing we love to call crisis. So, without further ado, her message is simple but powerful. We heal. When we heal people, we heal organizations. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Melanie Gray. Bienvenidos.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for such a wonderful and warm welcome. It is such an honor to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And it's an honor to have you on the show, Dr. Melanie. I'm just very excited and just happy that you chose my platform to tell your story because you have a wonderful story, girl. You really do. I
Well,
love
thank
it.
you so much. And again, I am the one, Iris, who is honored, because I get to contribute and to give back and to know that I have had a chance to invest in someone else. And I think that is what makes the world and life worth living is giving back.
Yes, amen to that. Dr. Melanie, I'm just excited that you're here because you just have such a wonderful, like I mentioned, story to tell. We definitely want to know who Melanie is. But before we dive in a little bit deeper into our conversation, I got to ask you something. Let's do a little bit of an icebreaker question here.
Sure.
I always like to start with something light, warm, and just simply human. If you had a completely stress free day, no responsibilities, no expectations, what would your ideal day look like from morning to night? What would that look like?
Well, it depends on what day and what the day was like before. Because if I've been really, really busy, then my ideal day is vegging out on Hallmark movies
Ooh,
and staying in my pajamas,
I love that.
having a glass of wine and my favorite food. Now, if it's a day a week when I'm really focusing on being productive and I'm well paced, then the perfect day for me is checking off things on on my to do list because I do like to have a sense of completion.
I love that. Like you feel like you're accomplishing something, right? At the end of the day.
I like to uh I plan out my day. You know, it isn't always perfect, but I do try to plan out my day. And I compartmentalize, Iris. Like I have so much time for reading, so much time for my bike, so much time for business, so much time for church. What am I going to
Mm.
do with my family? What am I going to visit my mom? So I kind of compartmentalize, and my ability to do that, I think, helps me get a lot done, and then I can check off those boxes.
I like that. And the fact that you mentioned Hallmark movies, let me tell you something. And I know my mother in law is listening to this. That's her thing, okay? She loves those Hallmark movies. But you know what? I like the Lifetime kind, the one about like the cheaters or the killer.
Oh, do
I
you know
don't
that?
know.
Those are not mine. I actually I love Hallmark so much. I went on the Hallmark Christmas cruise last year.
Oh my God. So they actually have a thing. I got to let my mama Jay know, my
Yes,
mother in law.
girl. It was a
Okay.
whole 4 days of Christmas, Hallmark, the stars, and everything. It was marvelous.
Wow. Wow. I got to let her know about that. And Dr. Melanie, I know that you mentioned that you're tuning in all the way from Wisconsin, but our listeners, I want to know what makes Dr. Melanie, where did your roots start? Who is this wonderful lady? How did
Well,
you get to where
girl,
you are?
it's I
Tell
could,
me.
I've been on the planet quite a while. This could be long.
Let's talk through it.
I am so blessed to be 67 years young. And with that, I I was raised by parents who were came up through Jim Crow, intense segregation, uh,
Wow.
racism, the whole thing. So that they raised me. I was raised by parents who had to suffer that, and so their hope for me was that I wouldn't be in a field, sharecropping, that
Hmm.
I would have a chance to actually graduate from high school and ideally go to college, and so. And be able to have chances in life, So they made sure that I got to do that. I had to do the work. My mother said when I was 18, she said, well, she gave me luggage. I never will forget. They gave me luggage for my high school graduation present. I'm like, is there a message here? Yeah, we have done our job. You are on your own, and make life happen. And so literally, I never went back home to live after I left. And I was 17, and I've really been on my own ever since. I mean, I could go home for the weekend, but I really didn't ever live back home again because in my time, the expectation was that you don't. I mean, none of my friends, none of us went back home. It just wasn't what you did, right?
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
you had to go haul it on your own. So I did. I was first generation college. I became a nurse. I had only five options. I laugh at it now because I look at all the plethora of opportunity and options people have now, and there really were only five choices for me as an African American young woman. It was work in a factory, get married, become a secretary, a teacher, or a nurse. And well, I scratched my head and I said, well, mama's a nurse. I've been around, but I think I can do that. And my mother was like, yep, you can do that because then you will always have a job, and you can visit, but you can't come back here. And
Wow.
so
That's tough love. I love
yeah,
it
she
though.
was a tough love girl. She was like, I don't play. So that's what I did. And I staffed. I did it with a staff nurse. I did we didn't go back to school. I was really a staff nurse supervisor. I loved it. I became a nurse to take care of people. But then uh in like I'd say my early 40s is when I went back to school. I was somewhere in my 40s when I went back to school and got my master's and then ultimately my doctorate. But I worked as a
Nice.
staff nurse bedside for over 20 years before I ever went back to school.
Wow.
And, that again offered opportunities for me in terms of, being able to teach, do leadership, and different things like that. So I'm also, did all of those things, very involved in my church, in my community, and married 38 years, be 38 years this October, to my wonderful husband and best friend. And
Oh,
yeah, we,
beautiful.
yeah, we weren't able to have any kids, but we have everybody else's kids, so we're professional godparents.
Yeah, why not? There's
Yeah, it works,
yeah, it worked.
When
Yeah.
they come, they're happy, and when they're not
Yes.
happy, they can go. So
Wow, that that's so funny. But you know what? You guys are happy, and there's a reason why you guys are still married. That's phenomenal. And that's beautiful. Marriage is beautiful to me, I feel like.
It is. It's hard work, Iris. I mean, I think that some of these television shows, and I won't name them, uh, they shall remain nameless. But you know, uh, BET or some of these stations, I won't name them either. But housewives or this and that. Let me say that they
Yeah.
don't paint a true picture of marriage. It's work and it's give and take,
Yeah. Yeah.
and no one's created to make you happy, right? No one, your happiness is not the responsibility of someone else. You have to make that choice every day. And it's not about stuff, it's not about things. I don't think. One of the perspectives I have is, as a nurse, I've seen, and with my own parents, people work their whole lives for homes and
Yeah.
things. And as they age, they end up moving all these things that nobody else wants, and you end up in a room somewhere that you didn't even choose. So
Mm.
it's really, you have to think about, where are you putting your values, right? And what are you investing in? Don't get it twisted.
I love that. I love that you mentioned that. I mean, put your values where you believe where it needs to be invested. And I love that because you know what? You definitely had some great humble upbringings. And with that tough love, I feel like I get the sense that that shaped the person that you are. And let me ask you, once you decided to go back to school and you decided to get your doctorate, when did the health coaching part of it came out of it? I mean, I'm pretty sure that just thinking about it, because you were a nurse, it just comes naturally, right? But when
Yes,
did you start thinking about that? Because I think I've seen so many and have interviewed so many health coaches out there. But then again, it's very rare that you meet a nurse to go with it. So did that come naturally? I'm pretty sure it did, but can you tell us a little bit about that?
yes. So, by nature, I'm that person, I think, that has "tell me all your business" on their forehead, and I just don't know it. Because no matter where I am, people just like to talk to me. And
Yeah.
that
And
was just the nature of my life, in work, that I'm that person people come to, solve problems, listen, all of that. And during COVID, when everyone's so stressed out, and I was working with a lot of younger nurses who hadn't been through anything yet, and by the time COVID had come around, I was like, okay, this we will get through this, because I've been
yep.
through the beginning of HIV when that was first identified.
Oh,
I've
wow.
been through norovirus,
Coronavirus?
monkeypox, H1N1, you name it. I've been through a lot of things. Nothing quite like COVID, but I've been through some things. So I was had a little bit more resilience ready, right, when that crisis came. But I was therefore leaned on by my organization to help support other people, my team members. And that is what resulted in my really working with people and becoming a subject matter expert around trauma informed care. And then early last year, my organization decided that they didn't need my role anymore. They were repositioning themselves. And so they gave me the privilege of being severed out. And I said, thank
Wow.
you so much. And so, since you're severing me out, I will use this time to build my business. And that's what led me into formal coaching, because I was more informal prior to that.
Wow. Wow. It's like after COVID, a lot of things change, you know, but then again, a lot of people would take that as a sign of failure, but then again, it pursued you or made you find this other opportunity to coach people. You know, I think that's amazing how that happened because when you get laid off from a job or they feel like they have to cut budget or anything off, I feel like sometimes it might be a blessing in disguise. I'm like a firm believer of that. I feel like Jesus or our God works in mysterious way, right? Just it's
Well,
funny
he
how that works
does.
out.
We know nothing in this life, this world is not our eternity. I mean, since
Yeah.
you brought that up, I think it's important, at least for me, and my walk in my faith, I know that this is not my eternity. So I don't live it like this is all I'm ever going to have or get. And that shapes how I think navigate life in the world, because I'm not I'm not all bought into just what is it before me. It's my faith that keeps me moving and connected to a higher perspective. I do
Mm,
think that given work as it is today, that everyone needs to be prepared for a pivot. It's going to happen for our Gen Alphas. They're saying some literature says that Gen Alphas are going to change careers 5 to 7 times and change jobs up to 16 times. Now, that's exhausting.
it
We
is.
don't and we don't even know what those jobs are going to be because they haven't been discovered yet. Yet that is still what we're seeing, maybe not at that same rate, but we're seeing across various industries that there are mergers and there is more insecurity than security. And the 40-40 plan, go to school, get a job 40 hours a week for 40 years, you're not going to be with anybody that long.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
I've been
true.
merged 5 times and I'm a boomer.
Mm, look at that. And you seen it all. And you went down the list. I'm talking about you said HIV, you said norovirus, HA1. You seen it
Monkeypox,
all.
all the poxes. I mean, you
All
name.
everything. Oh my God. And I love how you mentioned that you were working with young nurses, right?
Hmm.
And it's like you know about what it's like, what it takes to be a nurse. Experienced work with those young nurses, but then that also that corporate aspect comes into it. So, like, where is it that, like, when you realize burnout wasn't just workload? Like, I know you mentioned that COVID-19 made you change the perspective and open up your business as a coach, but how do you like coach these individuals to just when they're feeling burned out and they feel that workload, like when or how do we work with people like that? I guess I'm trying to say it and it's not trying to come out right, my question here. So I'm
No,
sorry.
no, I believe you work with people to help them understand what is it that is important to them and what is driving you. First of all, because burnout means you're never turning off. It really
Mm,
means in essence you're not stopping. There aren't any boundaries around your work and then everything else you're trying to do. Now with many young people, not everyone, but what I often observe with people is they scroll. Number one, I don't know why, Iris, people want to get their cues and direction from scrolling on Facebook.
yeah,
Why they want strangers who do not pay their bills,
that's so
do
weird to me
not
too.
truly know them, are not going to be at their bedside if they're sick. I don't
Mm,
know why. I do not know
mm.
why they want to get their cues from social media
Or putting
because
their business
it's
out
not
there, right? Or putting their business out there. I'm sorry to
putting their
interrupt
business
you.
out there and people
Why?
are scrolling. All I see happening is that they're scrolling and it's enhancing their dissatisfaction with their life and themselves. Then they over push themselves. Well, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing enough. Well, and so you have to turn off or you have to have time to rest. You need time to recalibrate. Burnout is not uh, turning off when it comes to work. It's not setting boundaries sometimes for work and allowing yourself to do email all night long, work all night long, text all night. You can set boundaries around work. But in addition, sometimes we burn out because we do too much.
Mm,
Trying to keep up, trying to have more, doing the scrolling and saying, well, what's wrong with my life? You have to make a decision and be still enough to understand what is important to you. And that's one of the things I really help people do is really look at themselves and decide, what do you value and
mm.
what is it going to cost you to invest to make that value a reality for you? Because this whole thought about we can all have it all is a bunch of hoo-hoo, Iris.
Yeah.
Nobody, what is all anyway? And the all in your life is not the all in my life. And the truth is, we can be comfortable, but everyone isn't going to be in a mansion with 5 bedrooms and a Maserati and servants. I mean, this whole
Right?
idea of this grand that we're not successful if we don't have a lot of things is not real.
Mm, mm. And Dr. Melanie, we have this thing now called AI. Let's
I
talk
know,
about
girl.
AI. It makes pretty much anybody out of the street could come in and tell AI, hey, make me a resume, and they can make you sound phenomenal.
They do.
But AI is changing everything. And I love how you mentioned the Gen Alpha generation. I mean, they have a lot to worry about, but so do we, because there's this little thing dangling right in front of us called AI, and it's changing every single day. Like, now we have robots doing certain things. I wouldn't be surprised if we had robots down the road be nurses. I guarantee you it's going to happen, you know?
Well, I think that they might use because the nation, unfortunately, is 250 to 400,000 nurses short. They're going to have to amplify some use of technology to keep the
Oh, yeah.
public safe. But I think it will never replace the person at the bedside that has the judgment because AI can gather data and it can learn to respond to what's put into it, but it doesn't have the innate sense of awareness that we have as human beings. We're still the
Yep.
gifts, we're still the
Yep.
big deal.
We're the ones that have like that power to show love, empathy, and to show that we care. A robot is not going to give you that. That's one thing to definitely point out, you know? So I don't know. That just came over me because we were talking about Gen Alpha. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're right. Not only are they scrolling, but now we have this thing called freaking AI. It's just everywhere. It's crazy.
Well, it
So
really is, but a lot of there's never been a time in the world where you could where it was easier to be an entrepreneur and to generate some income on your own as it is now with AI. So it depends on how we choose to leverage it, how we choose to use it, and how we must continue to educate ourselves. Lifelong learning is really real now. I mean, it's a term that we've used to banter about for a long time, but I think lifelong learning is more necessary now than ever before.
so true. So true. I definitely want to shift and talk about the nervous system awareness because I love it how your work focuses very heavily on the nervous system, just like how it regulates. But for someone listening right now, Melanie, who has never heard that concept before, how does that nervous system actually affect the way we lead and react and just make all this crazy decisions that we make?
Well, one of the reasons is when your nervous system is activated, if you're frustrated, if you're angry, if you're become afraid, afraid of something, you're going to then become reactive and irritable. If you're afraid you're going to lose your job, afraid you're not going to make a deadline, not sure how you're going to look in a meeting, that can trigger your fight and flight response where you're reactive, you become you have avoidance, you check out, you
Yeah.
might freeze or become paralyzed. So you might also become real people pleasing because you want to make
Mm,
sure that you everyone sees you being nice, you fit in, which then means you're not necessarily setting the boundaries you need. So that stress response, when it's activated in your nervous system, your cortisol, when your stress system activates, your cortisol levels increase. That's why we gain weight when we're stressed all the time. Our adrenaline can surge, and our frontal cortex that gives us peace or rest goes offline. And so we just burn up then. And so your
wow.
stress response, once it's activated, then you don't find time to pivot and to rest, you can go into chronic dysregulation. So your body just stays in this threat mode because you haven't allowed yourself to rest and to reflect, and then your nervous system never recovers. How does that show up at work? Well, then if you're always dysregulated and irritable, your neck hurts, your stomach hurts, you're constipated, your hair is brittle and falling out, you don't like how you look because you're gaining weight, and your cortisol because your cortisol levels are up, then You make poor decisions at work. You're more reactive in your communications. Your email might be a little sharper. You might complain of brain fog and forgetfulness, and your team relationships might suffer.
Mm, mm. So true. So true. And I definitely want to hone in on that trauma responses at work since we're talking about it. I mean, talking about just those trauma responses, just they could show up as things like you mentioned people pleasing, right? That's one of them.
Mhm.
You also mentioned the person that wants to make things perfect, right? Or shut down or over controlling. I mean, that's just fascinating because those type of behaviors are very common in like high performing environments.
Yes.
Healthcare is big. Healthcare is so huge and, other healthcare and leadership opportunities or jobs as well have that stress. So, how can people recognize those patterns are actually stress responses rather than those personality traits?
Well, I think you don't always see your personality as it really is when you're stressed because again, you're in this chronic sense of state of dysregulation, right? And it's
Yeah.
showing up by those symptoms I mentioned, the brain fog, the
Mhm.
headaches, the muscle aches, the constipation, your
Awakening.
micromanagement
Yep.
interactions. Those are sometimes symptoms of nervous system dysregulation and burnout. Sometimes you mentioned trauma. Trauma informed care focuses on what has happened to you, not what is wrong with you. When are speaking and engaging with someone and we don't get the response, or we get a response that surprises us, like, why do they act like that? Why do they respond like that?
Yeah.
Well, as leaders, we have to be sensitive that we don't know everyone's trauma. But when we're living in a world where 70% or more of everyone that we encounter in a day may have had some kind of trauma, right? That we can be triggering
Yeah.
them if we're burned out and irritable and not creating that cohesive team. We could be triggering our team members and people we work with to then build a cycle where they are in nervous system dysregulation and it just begins to become a not very good scenario for anyone.
Mm. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I think it's very important for people, to understand those patterns, regarding those stress responses rather than the personality traits. I think that's very important to acknowledge. I definitely wanted to transition and talk about your wonderful book. I just have to say, Dr. Melanie, what a powerful title.
Well,
Regulate
Iris, I
first.
do have to tell you, I
Yes.
didn't. My mom got sick. I'm a caregiver. My
Mhm.
husband got sick, and since I so my book is going to be launching actually now in June.
Ooh.
So yeah, but it's going to be available in June. So I got pushed back a little bit, but it's a great
Okay.
title. And it's going to be a great book.
Yes, I just wanted to say, and thank you so much for clarifying that. I appreciate it because I love the title, Regulate First, Lead Second. I mean,
Mhm.
I feel like that phrase alone, Dr. Melanie, is just powerful. I mean, what does it look like in real life when a leader just regulates themselves before responding to situations? I mean, teams or conflicts. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, you have to be in control and regulate yourself first because it impacts your interactions, impact your team. Again, so you want to know where you are, right? If I know that I am not in the greatest space today because maybe my husband is going through chemo, I'm taking care of my mom, maybe I'm
Mm,
going to reduce my meetings this week, today.
yeah.
I'm going to reduce my engagement so that I appear correctly with my team. Maybe I'm going to, as a leader, understand that maybe something's going on in my community that my team is going to be impacted by a loss of a community loved one, a fire, loss of a big company, big layoffs in the community. That's going to impact my team. So if I regulate myself and I'm aware and sensitive, because regulating yourself doesn't just mean your own emotions, it means that you're regulating and are sensitive to the needs of around you of your team. So you want to regulate where you are so you can be sensitive to your team so that you can then lead effectively.
Mm. And I'm going to ask you something from your, perspective in all transparency. In your opinion, based on all your experience, years in corporate leadership, coaching individuals alone, what makes a great leader?
In my opinion, a great leader models the behavior that they want followed. And a
Mm.
great leader is consistent and they listen. And finally, a great leader looks and builds the talents of their team. Rather than having to be the biggest and brightest brain in the room, they acknowledge that people around them might be smarter and they build and leverage the skill set of others so that everyone wins.
Mm.
Because
Oh,
everybody wants to be seen.
oh yeah.
And they want to know, do you know I'm in the room?
Mm.
So great leaders don't consider they a great leader, I believe, works themselves out of a job. They're so good at building others that they have to go find something else to do.
Wow. And working in healthcare myself, Dr. Melanie, I encounter so many leaders, and some of them have no business being leaders neither. I'm going to be honest with you. It's like,
Hmm.
how the heck did you get into that role? And to me, it's very important. And I like how you mentioned that, because it's something about, like, I had a woke moment. I'm going to be honest with you
Hmm.
that now, as I'm in my 40s, but we just got a new leader that's in his 30s. And I was just like, wow. It's kind of like, how do you handle somebody that's younger than you and they're their leader and they want to do things differently? Well, I do this differently. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it creates a little bit of a tension there. But then again, I think it is very important for the leader to incorporate the different ways everybody does something, or if it benefits the team, maybe they could incorporate that way better. It's just little things like that. If you had mentioned.
I agree. I know sometimes it's not always the smartest person in the room that gets the leadership position. I mean, there's social promotion. We can't, we can't, we got to tell the truth about that. Some people
Mm,
there is social promotion, and some people get to rise fast because they just had the right mentor. They
it's true.
became someone took them under their wing and they decided that this is the person I'm going to invest in, and so they get to rise higher and faster. Does it mean they're better? And sometimes we think that now there are some bright rising stars that are young, like you said, in their 30s, but sometimes they just were in the right place at the right time with the right mentor. And
Mm,
we're women of color. I mean, Iris, you and I are women of color.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
can't speak for you, but my parents weren't playing golf with Mr. Nobody. They
Mm,
weren't on the golf course making a internship for me and making a way for me and making sure somebody know my name, right? Uh, those things I can't speak for you. That didn't happen for me. So some of my white counterparts, they did have that. They had parents who had master's degrees and doctors. Girl, I didn't know what a PhD was until I was 40. I could have been
yeah.
alphabet soup, you
Yeah.
know. For
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
I just didn't know. I didn't have. I had to learn along the way, and so we can't. That does still happen. I mean, um, it does still happen very much. It's
Yeah. It
not
really
always about.
does.
Sometimes it's who you know.
Yeah, it's true. It's not what you know, it's who you know. That's how it is too in healthcare. It's just like, how did that person get to leadership? They're not even, have any leadership qualities. And I'll tell you something. I grew up very humble too. I grew up with parents that just a high school education. They barely knew Spanish. I mean, they barely knew
Mm,
English. All they spoke was Spanish in my household. That's it. So, like, when I had told my mom, "Hey, I got my master's degree. Why do you need that? Why would you want that?" You know what I mean? So it's
yeah.
like, wow, mom, this is why I decided to do it, and I'm not going to stop. I plan on getting my PhD eventually. So those are some of the things that I completely understand where you're coming from, Dr. Melanie, because it's very relatable. And I feel like, now that we're heading to the closure of our conversation here, this takes me to my other point because this conversation has not only been very insightful, transparent, and real, which I love, but it's just very, very informative. And I think that so many listeners are going to walk away just feeling both seen and empowered. So before we wrap up, I want to ask you just one more question, just for that listener out there. If someone listening today is feeling burned out, overwhelmed, or that emotionally exhausted thing they are currently going through right now, if they could only take away one message out of our conversation today, what message would you want them to hear right away?
I want them to stop it, that they have to scan and understand what is my body and what are my emotions telling me about what needs to change. Then they have to tell themselves the truth. And then they have to own the fact that they're not in a good space, and they have to prioritize making the decisions and the changes to come out of this space and situation that they're in. And then they have to be intentional. Everything
Mm,
you they did not get, none of us have are where we are right now if we hadn't been intentional about getting that bachelor's degree, intentional about getting that master's degree, intentional about having a job, intentional about starting your podcast. You have to be
yeah.
intentional and have an actual plan, not complain. And then you have to be willing to transform. So burnout is a choice, Iris. I do not believe anyone has to be burned out. It's a choice that you make until you choose to do something different and make a difference in your life. I tell them that
Mhm.
yes, they can. And I would tell them to use the resources. Many of us have employee assistance programs. If you're burned out and you need professional help, and sometimes you need professional clinical help, there's nothing wrong with that. Use your EAP program. Less than 6% of the people in the nation that have access to an employee assistance program actually use them. So I tell them to
Wow.
stop it, use their resources. If you have paid time off, take it and use it. Take a break. You won't know what it feels like to change and have rest until you do it so you can hear yourself think.
Mm. I love that. I love it. And it's simple. Stop it. You just said it how it is. Stop it. Use those resources. Use that EAP. I've been using mine. I love mine, but we all need to take advantage of that and take that time off. Isn't it nice when we are able to take that time off? It kind of helps rejuvenate yourself, right? It's like a
Yes, it
breather,
does.
a major stop button on like major life events. That's what I like to call PTO. Like, I love it.
Use it.
Not, of course. Dr. Melanie, for our listeners who want to just learn more about you, you have this upcoming book coming out. Where can they connect and find you? Tell our listeners where they could like get the 411 on the beautiful things that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. They can go to Dr. Melanie Gray, theconfidencecoach.com.
Excellent. Can you repeat that again? Dr. Melanie Gray,
Mm-hmm.
theconfidencecoach.com. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Melanie is Melanie Gray, Gray, theconfidencecoach.com.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Melanie. I want to thank you so much again for joining me today on this Conversations with Iris. This is truly just such a meaningful conversation. So, thank you again for choosing this platform. And I'm so grateful that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Iris.
Of course. And to my wonderful listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in and for supporting the show. And of course, for continue to help this little podcast that could just grow and reach just more beautiful people around the world. And I always like to say this, okay? If this episode resonated with you, please feel free to share with somebody that needs to hear this. There's someone out there that's feeling that burned out. Remember what Dr. Melanie said, stop it. Just stop it. Until the next time, my beautiful listeners, con mucho amor, this has been Conversations with Iris. And remember, take care of your mind, your body, and your spirit. See you next Friday. Thank you.